Hey everybody, Lady Luck here, and we're celebrating America's 250th birthday. Now, all summer long, I'm going to be celebrating by playing on SpinQuest.com, which is an American-owned social casino. It obviously features over 1,000 slot games and live blackjack, live craps, live bubble craps. Head on over to SpinQuest.com. Get yourself a $30 coin pack for just $10.
SpinQuest is a free-to-play social casino. Void where prohibited. Visit SpinQuest.com for more details.
All new drinks are now at McDonald's. Like the strawberry watermelon refresher, the mango pineapple refresher with popping boba, and the Sprite berry blast topped with cold foam. Who knew ice cold drinks could be so fire?
The sun's out, and so is our new drink lineup. From the Blackberry Passion Fruit Refresher to the Dirty Dr. Pepper. And they all pair perfectly with some fries. Refreshers contain caffeine. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Hi, I'm Anya Lichtarowicz, and this is Somewhere on Earth. I'm in London. It is Tuesday, the 21st of April, 2026. Welcome to the Global Tech Podcast. Coming up today. From robo-taxis on city streets to AI systems making split-second decisions, the future of transport is already here, and it runs on data. In places like Zagreb, you can now step into a driverless cab. And with companies preparing to launch similar services in cities like London, that shift is only accelerating. While the vehicles grab the headlines, there's a quieter question underneath it all. How does the data powering this actually move? Because every autonomous journey depends on fast, constant connectivity, and the reality of how the internet works is often very different from what we imagine. Today we're going beyond the surface, into the physical infrastructure carrying that information around the world, and the innovations reshaping it. It's all coming up on Somewhere on Earth, the Global Tech Podcast. If you're in Zagreb, Croatia, and you want to book a cab, you can now pick a driverless one. No driver, no small talk. Just an autonomous vehicle taking you from A to B. It sounds futuristic, but the technology is already here, and it's moving fast. In fact, companies are preparing to bring driverless taxi services to the UK as soon as this September. So, how do people feel about this?
So my name is Andrew Bach. I'm actually from Finland, called small city Lappeenranta, and that is in Finland from 15 miles from Russia's border. Well, I think in Finland we haven't really thought about that because we don't have those yet. But of course, personally, I was in San Francisco a couple of months ago and I saw the Waymos first time, and I thought it was really fascinating. And the first time when I went into this driverless car in the back seat, it was really weird moment for me to see the steering itself the first time. Of course, I think there's many good things that when it comes to driverless vehicles, especially driverless cabs. Example that you can use them probably 24/7. They are probably maybe cheaper than older taxis. Of course, when I think maybe some negative sides, example in UK, especially London, there's many black cab taxi drivers. They have to take this really hard test. They are good professionals in their own field, and if those disappear, would it even be there's some kind of aspect of disappearing of a culture? So of course there's some negative sides towards that, but I think in general there's many positive sides of that.
My name is Esther, I'm from London. I'm actually looking forward to it, mostly because things like going home from a night out, especially for us that are women, I feel like there is a little bit of safety where you're not worried about a man driving the car. There's not a lot of women drivers, Uber drivers, when it comes to this. So it's one of those things where it would be great if you can just be okay, it's safety, and you don't have to worry about, something's going to happen to me on the way home. So yeah.
So you feel safer in a driverless car than one driven potentially by a man?
At night, yes, I do. Because if I've been drinking, I would like to think I can get home safe. I can maybe fall asleep in the car and not worry something's going to happen. So yes, I do.
Hi, my name is Damien and I'm Canadian. I'm here as a student just to see different perspectives about what the future of driverless car would be, because I have my own opinion. I believe driverless cars are the future of transportation for three main reasons. For the reason that they optimize traffic in cities, which reduce the carbon footprint of transportation of big cities, also benefits long transportation, reducing costs, preventing accidents on highways, for example, or intense traffic areas, and also it allows for roads to be safer because it lessens the risk of dangerous drivers on the road. And extra point, I believe it also costs less for students or for young people to get from point A to point B, because there's not this pressure of owning a car and owning a means of transportation. And in the future, I see that this cultural norm of not owning a car would eventually benefit a whole generation.
I recorded those responses at the launch of the Institute for Driverless Transport, so obviously everyone there was keen to find out more. But I also spoke to one of the Institute's co-founders, Tim Siritrick. The organisation says the UK is actually well prepared, with new laws, insurance frameworks and regulators in place to handle autonomous vehicles on our roads. Globally, the rollout is even further ahead. Cities in the US, China and parts of the Middle East already have robo-taxis operating at scale, and Europe is starting to catch up. But what about safety? That's the big question. While thousands of miles have now been driven by autonomous vehicles without a human fatality, comparing them directly to human drivers isn't straightforward, and concerns still remain. So is this the future of transport, or are we moving too fast? Well, I started by asking what exactly we mean when we talk about driverless vehicles.
So the Institute for Driverless Transport is a research organisation that's interested in autonomous vehicles, self-driving vehicles, whatever you'd like to call them, cars primarily right now that don't have a driver, that using technology, primarily AI systems, can get from point A to B. Currently, commercially, they are in the form of taxis, robo-taxis, the most famous company being Waymo, and these companies are entering the United Kingdom very soon. Waymo, for example, is starting a service here in London by September of this year. And we, as the Institute for Driverless Transport, want to provide a neutral voice, a conversation and a research organisation, a convening body and a research organisation that's trying to investigate what happens next. What happens once this technology becomes widespread? How do we get our economy to benefit? How do we get our individuals and parts of society to benefit from this technology?
What's going on, everyone? It's Bluff here, and you know what's more American than America's 250th birthday? Supporting American-owned companies like SpinQuest, America's #1 social casino with over 1,000 games like live dealer blackjack and craps. They're offering new users a $30 coin package for just $10. Go to spinquest.com and sign up today.
SpinQuest is a free-to-play social casino. Void where prohibited. Visit spinquest.com for more details.
September's not far away, is it, Tim? So my question to you is, how ready is London and the UK, from your research, to have driverless cars?
Funnily enough, very ready. A lot of media coverage has been skeptical, rightly so, for something new and as important as this, but the UK has a very excellent regulatory environment here. People have been thinking about this for years now. There's something known as the Automated Vehicles Act, a piece of legislation, a law, made to regulate this, to make sure that the legal liability, who's at fault should anything happen, is established. The insurance systems are being established. All of this is an active conversation, and there's a great organization known as the Centre for Connected and Automated Vehicles that is working on this.
And what about globally? Because we're looking at the UK in September, starting in London. But what about globally? Because I've spoken to a few people who've come today, and I've had one Finnish guy saying, look, where I'm from in the north of Finland, people just don't know about these things. How ready is the rest of the world?
In fact, the rest of the world is kind of coming to the UK. In terms of the Nordics, there is Project Holon, I believe, in Oslo, in Norway, that has autonomous shuttles already operating and helping people get from the suburbs to the city centre, about a dozen vehicles. But what made me truly believe in this technology is that several independent organisations across the whole world have developed large-scale, I'm talking thousands of vehicles, working autonomously. We have Waymo in the United States, we have Zoox in the United States, not quite on the scale of thousands, but we have Tesla, which is reaching autonomy slowly but surely. In China, there are firms such as Pony AI, firms like WeRide and Baidu's Apollo Go. These operate in about a dozen Chinese cities, but also across the Middle East. We're talking Dubai, we're talking Doha, and increasingly Riyadh in Saudi Arabia as well. And in Europe, just yesterday in Zagreb, Croatia, Pony AI started an autonomous vehicle service. That means that now you can take, on the Uber app, a vehicle that will take you from point A to B across the old city of Zagreb without any driver inside. So London is coming soon, and it won't be the first. In fact, it'll be one of the first of 30 or so to get this technology. First of 30 cities.
So it all sounds incredibly exciting and very science fiction, doesn't it? But people do remember the safety aspects. There have been a few examples where people have been injured or have lost their lives. How safe is it now? If one of our listeners was looking at their ride-hailing app, thinking, do I order someone who's a car that doesn't have a driver or one with a driver? What would you say to them? How safe is it?
An excellent question of utmost importance. I have seen certain private hire vehicles, Uber, taxi drivers, use their phones whilst they're driving. I won't see that in the case of an autonomous vehicle, but the numbers really speak for themselves. Last week, Waymo had 500,000 rides, 500,000 rides in just 1 week. They've had over 14 million miles driven, if not more, and in those cases there have been no human fatalities. Unfortunately, a cat was killed not too long ago, but when we're talking on this scale compared to human drivers, the numbers get a little bit more dangerous. However, it's really hard to compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges. We don't have perfect data for this to suggest that autonomous vehicles are much, much safer. For example, autonomous vehicles only operate in city centres. They typically operate 24 hours a day, but they don't consider rural roads, they don't consider teenage drivers. What's really important is to get young men, primarily, aged 16 to 30, into one of these rather than behind the steering wheel, because that's the demographic that's most likely to cause traffic accidents. Overall, however, I am perfectly fine with the safety, and no government would allow this on the road if they truly thought it causes an individual risk.
We've been talking about cars a lot, but what about other vehicles? Because let's be honest, can you imagine an HGV that's travelling a long distance? At the moment, there are obviously very strict regulations in place for safety, that the driver has to take breaks. This obviously adds to costs. What have you? It adds. So obviously this adds to the costs of moving whatever they're transporting, their loads. Are we really at a stage yet that we can start imagining driverless lorries maybe out there that can be taking our food from point A to point B, or is that still too far? Because at the moment everything is city centre based, isn't it?
We have several startups working on that exact problem of automating logistics transport, HGVs. There's Kodiak and Aurora, based in Texas. One of these is operating in a basin that's entirely desert-based, moving oil, moving industrial products across some of the most dangerous roads in the world. Now, there's also operators in China. Pony AI, the same company that's doing robo-taxis in Zagreb, is also having a freight service that goes between Chinese cities. These are long distances we're talking. Now, there are additional technical challenges and there are additional safety considerations. So in fact, these companies are placing a much higher burden upon themselves to make sure that this is profitable, that this works, and that there are as little incidents on hundreds of thousands, millions of miles as possible.
There will be more from Tim Siritrick in the Pod Extra version of the show, including single-person shuttle pods that might soon be taking us across cities. Please search pod.fan, Somewhere on Earth podcast, go to the page and subscribe. For just $10 a month, you can get lots more soap. What if most of the world's internet traffic doesn't move the way we think it does? Today, we're diving into the hidden architecture of the internet and challenging some of the assumptions many of us have about how data actually travels from one place to another. Despite all the attention on satellites and wireless technologies, the reality is more grounded. Literally. The global network still depends on fibre, a physical medium that carries light and with it information, more efficiently than anything else we've developed. Our guest today has taken a close, detailed look at this system, unpacking how it really works, where common misconceptions come from, and what's actually changing beneath the surface. From the idea of optic tunnels to the emergence of hollow core fibre, where light can travel faster through air within a glass structure, we're exploring how the future of connectivity isn't about replacing fibre, but refining it. Joining us is Svante Jurnal, co-founder of Optic Tunnels, working on physical fibre optic infrastructure in the Nordic region.
Most people have a pretty fuzzy view of how data actually gets transported around the world and how the internet works. And that's completely understandable. Other infrastructure like roads and railways that we use for moving physical stuff is visible. We can even see with our own eyes the cars and the trucks and the ships as they're moving things around. So we have a very good understanding of that. But the internet is invisible. And that does not mean that it's not physical. It's every bit as physical as other infrastructure, but it's hidden from our view. So the cables are either hidden under the streets or under the seabed, and the radio waves are also invisible to us. So if you're not in the industry, you're completely excused for not really knowing how the things that you see on your screen actually got there.
So explain it to me, Svante, to someone who's not a network engineer. How does the data transfer? Because you've got international traffic, intercontinental, that covers massive distances. But a lot of what you're saying is that most of the data transfer is actually quite regional and quite local. So tell me how this all works.
So let me first start with the most basic point, and it's that the vast majority of all internet traffic travels through fiber optic cables, not through the air, not through the space. So even if you do everything from your cell phone, the wireless part is just the very last bit from your phone to the nearest antenna. And from that point, the traffic goes straight down into the ground, into fiber optic cables, and it stays there for most of its journey. And this is especially true for the long distances between cities and countries. So before we go into the 95% statistics, there's another old common misunderstanding that satellites stand for a significant share of internet traffic. But that's simply not true. Satellites are important in many ways, but when it comes to the main flows of internet traffic, they are basically irrelevant. Now, when you need to cross an ocean to connect Europe to North America or Asia to Australia, you still use fiber cables, but since there's water in between, these are lying on the seafloor. So these are the world's submarine cables that carry almost all data traffic between continents. And it's easy to think that these cables are big, because whenever someone announces a new transatlantic cable, the headlines say that they are deploying a massive new internet cable, which is true in the sense that the capacity is enormous, but they are physically tiny. They are the size of a garden hose. So you could easily take all the cables connecting Europe and North America and hold them in your arms. So
it's, I was going to say, it's certainly not as massive as we imagine.
No, it's the opposite. They are much thinner than people imagine. So when you see the maps, it looks like great pipelines or subsea highways or something. They're literally 2 centimeters in diameter. but it's not about the size. So, as I mentioned, the first common misunderstanding is about the role of satellites. The second common misunderstanding relates to the submarine cables. Because as more people have learned that they carry most of the intercontinental traffic, that statistic has step by step been distorted to say that they stand for a majority, not just of intercontinental traffic, but of all global internet traffic, period. But that is absolutely not true because most traffic never touches a sea cable at all because most of it stays local, national, and regional. So, for example, think about Netflix. When you sit down and watch a film, that film does not come to you from across the Atlantic from some server in California. But Netflix has spread out thousands of their servers across more than 150 countries. So their content is always as close to their customers as possible. So when a new film or a new episode is transferred from the US to Europe, that data crosses the Atlantic exactly once. And after it has crossed the Atlantic, it stays in Europe, close to the people watching it. And the same logic applies to pretty much every major internet service, not just for consumers, but also for corporate services, cloud services as well. And how this works, this is where the data centers come in. Hyperscalers and cloud service providers are investing billions upon billions in data centers distributed across the entire world, specifically for the purpose that their data shall be stored closer to the people and closer to the businesses who need it. So most internet traffic stays local and regional. So it's mostly carried by terrestrial fiber cables, but still submarine cables are absolutely crucial for tying the entire world together. Because that Netflix episode that crossed the Atlantic just once, it definitely did so through a cable lying on the seafloor. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. The same thing, if you're sending an email or you're having a real-time Teams or FaceTime conversation with someone in the US, the way that your voice and your image gets there is in the form of light pulses inside hair-thin glass fiber strands lying on the bottom of the Atlantic. That's how it works, and it wouldn't work without these cables.
Obviously, undersea cables are incredibly important, but it looks as though the majority of the internet traffic is flowing from local data centers underneath the soil, literally underneath our feet. So my question is what about cybersecurity? Because I've read so many reports focusing so much about the security and the safety of undersea cables. Should we or policymakers be looking more at this local exchange of data rather than this international exchange of data when it comes to cybersecurity?
Yes, definitely. First of all, when it comes to cybersecurity, the greatest threat is not from sabotage, because there are very, very few documented cases of deliberate sabotage of communication cables. And when it comes to submarine cables, there has in fact been no documented case of sabotage since the 1950s. Whereas other types of cyber threats, including intrusion and tapping of cables, that is ongoing constantly. But nowadays, when it's about fiber optic cables, tapping does not happen underwater. Tapping happens onshore, in buildings, in manholes, sea cable landing sites. So there's every reason to talk more about the security of fiber optic cable systems, in particular when it comes to the threat from espionage and tapping. But those things do not happen on the seafloor. That's terrestrial. When it comes to threats to the submarine fiber infrastructure, it's worth noting first that globally, submarine cables are not under increasing threat generally. The number of cable faults relative to total length of installed cable has been declining for years and is expected to continue doing so. What is new is the massive increase in shadow fleet traffic in the Baltic Sea, substandard vessels, and that's exactly the type of vessels that are most likely to drag anchors. So given that increase in traffic, it would have been very surprising if there had not been an uptick in the number of incidents. And Among the cables that have been cut during this time is also Russian cables, including a Rostelecom cable connecting St. Petersburg to Kaliningrad, which has not been much in the news, a strategical critical link for Russia itself. As you can see, I'm less than convinced of the sabotage narrative. I have actually written quite extensively on this topic. There are other types of threat, definitely, to fiber optic infrastructure in general, but most of it is not related to the sea part, but to the terrestrial parts.
Svante Jurnel, co-founder of Optic Tunnels, and he will also be in the Pod Extra giving us his thoughts on the future of connectivity. Now, if you would like to contact us, then please email hello@somewhereonearth.co. You can also comment on our socials. Please don't forget to give us a rating on your favourite podcasting platform. It really makes a difference and helps our downloads grow. The production manager is Liz Toohey and I'm the editor. Until next week, goodbye.
What's going on, everyone? It's Bluff here, and you know what's more American than America's 250th birthday? Supporting American-owned companies like SpinQuest, America's #1 social casino with over 1,000 games like live dealer blackjack and craps. They're offering new users a $30 coin package for just $10. Go to spinquest.com and sign up today.
SpinQuest is a free-to-play social casino. Void where prohibited. Visit spinquest.com for more details.